Sentencing of the two brothers convicted of assault, GBH, and attempted murder during the July Unrest has been postponed to August. Now, the reason for the postponement is for the judge to consider 4 reports that were given to him today. Dylan and Ned Govender were found not guilty of the murder of 19-year-old Mbuso Majola, who was killed in Phoenix. Racial clashes, of course, in the area was sparked due to the looting that took place there. Now, our reporter Lethiwe Mdluli is following the story for us and joins me now from Durban. Thank you so much, Lethiwe, for joining us on the story. Of course, you know, it is a story that is definitely one that can spark outrage, you know, especially with community members. But what you've been following it very closely. So, what's the latest you can tell us there?
Well, as you correctly stated, Baron, the matter has been postponed to the 18th of August, and that is to allow the judge to study those 4 documents that were handed to him today by the state and also the defense. We heard from a clinical psychologist and also a social worker who handed their reports to the judge today. So he's asked for some time to study those reports. But just to take you back on this matter, on what exactly happened when these two were arrested back in 2022. In 2021, they were part of a mob that attacked a group of friends in Phoenix, and that was during the July Unrest that took place here in KwaZulu-Natal. And we heard that Mbuso Majola, who unfortunately died as a result of that attack, he was walking home when he was attacked in Phoenix. And during that time, you'd remember that there was a lot of people that were attacked in that area, and as a result, over 36 people died because of that. It was due to alleged racial clashes between the residents of Phoenix and also those places or rather townships that surround the area. And following that, the Human Rights Commission basically had hearings where we were part of them, and we heard from some of the residents in the townships on how they were attacked just by walking or driving in Phoenix. And following that, the 2 brothers were arrested, and they spent about 9 months in prison because they were actually, the police saw them in a CCTV footage where they were identified and then they were arrested. Following that, of course, there's been court proceedings. It's been about a year of these court proceedings. In May, they were found not guilty of murdering Mbuso Majola, but rather they were found guilty of attempted murder. And now we are waiting for their sentencing. And today that was meant to happen, but unfortunately there were some of the reports that were still missing, and the judge has asked for some time to study them. But we did speak to the NPA regarding this matter and what basically took place in court today. We spoke to Natasha Kara, and this is what she had to say.
The matter returned to court today, and as you have seen in court, various reports were put before the judge. There was the victim impact statement that was handed from the state side, which is basically a report compiled by the victim in this matter as to the consequences or the effects of the incident had on his life and going forward, of course. And then the defense also brought various reports from a psychologist, which was presented to court. Having received these reports, the judge in the matter decided that it would be prudent on him to have to read these documentation before making a sentencing. It was for that reason that the matter was remanded to the 18th of August 2023 for sentencing. The accused were released as they were previously out on bail.
And Lethiwe, like you previously mentioned, of course, Mbuso was one of 36 that was killed, and 19 years old, so young, still have, you know, your rest of your life ahead of you. I can't imagine what the family must be going through at this stage. And maybe, did you have a chance to talk to them at all, and what do they have to say?
Well, unfortunately, none of the family members were there in court today, but we did speak to some of the people that have been representing the family in court. And during the South African Human Rights Commission hearings in looking into this matter, we did speak to some of the families that were there about the after effects of what happened in Phoenix. And of course, a lot of them were sharing that they have anxiety as a result of those attacks. A lot of families were finding it very difficult to deal with some of the losses that they had experienced, and they were, of course, calling for justice. Unfortunately, we haven't seen anyone who has been arrested for some of the killings that were a result of what happened in Phoenix or the looting. And today, when we spoke to some of the family representatives, they were saying that they are hoping that finally there might be some people who are sentenced for this. But unfortunately, like I said, for the families, the judge in May did rule that the state had failed to convince the courts that the two brothers that were arrested in connection with Mbuso Majola's murder were a part of the people that actually killed him. So the state couldn't prove that they actually killed Mbuso Majola. So they were rather charged with attempted murder. So when they do eventually get sentenced on the 18th of August, they're only going to be sentenced on the charge of attempted murder. And the families did react to this, saying that they feel as if the courts had failed them, but they haven't been coming to court. We've only been able to speak to some of the family representatives, and of course we did hear from the families when they were sharing their testimonies with the South African Human Rights Commission last year of how they felt as a result of the tragedy that took place in Phoenix.
And just maybe take us back again, Lethiwe, regarding this case. Was there also something said about, the victims showing any threats to, the community of Phoenix, or was there actually a warrant for the attacks?
Well, today in court, actually, we did hear from the state who was presenting that a lot of the victims in the Phoenix saga, they weren't presenting any threats. But unfortunately, or maybe I shouldn't say unfortunately, I should just share that with the two brothers, they did say that they felt scared and they wanted to protect their homes. And this is why they then went out with a group of people. But unfortunately, of course, they were attacking people who weren't carrying any weapons at the time. And during the hearings, we did hear that some of the people that were in the township at the time when they were attacked, they weren't carrying any weapons or any guns. They were just driving, looking for petrol in most of the cases. Because you'd remember that during the July Unrest, a lot of townships or a lot of places around Durban did not have petrol. So people were trying to find ways or places that were still open during that time so that they can pour petrol and they'll be able to move around. And some of the people that were attacked also were from surrounding townships who mostly use Phoenix to get around. So they were attacked when they were trying to get home, such as Mbuso Majola as well, because his family and his friends did testify that at the time he was just basically walking home. He couldn't find transport to go home, so he was walking. So a lot of people that were found to have been attacked during those times, unfortunately, they didn't pose any threats. But unfortunately, of course, the South African Human Rights Commission also did hear that the reason why they were attacked was because of their race. We did speak to some of the families, like I mentioned, and they did mention that they felt as if their loved ones were attacked because of the skin or the skin tone, and they do feel as if those clashes were racially motivated. So it's a very sad situation that is coming out of this. But of course, like I mentioned, no one has been arrested or basically faced the law for these attacks. And unfortunately, the state did indicate that finding everyone who might have been behind the attacks is an impossible act, because a lot of people during that time were wearing masks, so the police could not find everyone. The two brothers were identified by CCTV footage. Of course, we will find out if they will be sentenced and they will be heading to prison for this. The clinical psychologist that did testify today, she did recommend that they rather receive probation, but another social worker that did testify again in court today did recommend that they actually be imprisoned. But of course, we will hear from Judge Gregory Kruger on the 18th of August whether he will give them time in jail or rather they will receive probation as a sentence.
Thank you so much, Lethiwe. Of course, like you just said, they're a very sad and complex story regarding these two brothers and, of course, those 36 people that were killed and 19-year-old Mabuso. It is quite sad, but hopefully justice will be served and the families can finally get some peace.